Hi gang, on the Joy of Football this week, lots and lots of you. We start with feedback because there's so much that you have sent us about your joy of football.
And we've got three of the best, which of course is wide ranging, from young players at Arsenal to familiar family names, but not a familiar first name in a successful old player for me. And Spurs, God, did they do well at Liverpool? That's reflected in three of the best as well.
Martin Tyler's letter from the Gantry is about a cup final 50 years ago and the celebration of it now.
And we do need to talk about Aston Villa.
Don't forget, if you want to get more involved, go on the Patreon. If you're listening to us on Spotify, give us a few stars. In fact, give us all of them. And you can, of course, review us or subscribe to us, follow us on whatever platform you're on. And you can just send in your comments because we're loving them at the moment. And you can also read us on substack.com, where we are The Joy of Football. Martin's letters, my rants.
The Joy of Football podcast. With me, Neil Barnett.
And with me, Martin Tyler.
Looks Rashani! Rooney! Aguero!
The Joy of Football.
Hello, the Joy of Football podcast with Martin Tyler, the greatest commentator in the world, and me, Neil Barnett. Martin did suggest that we start with a huddle around the ball. We'd be better off with a huddle around the ball, I think.
Everybody would be with that, yeah.
but then he decided, no way. So no huddle or huddle.
No, but we do respect all the balls on the table, that's for sure.
Well, you do. I've seen nothing but defeats recently. I respect no one. We are going to start today with feedback, which we normally do last because we get all the talk out the way and then get on to what you have to say. But so many of our listeners, viewers, followers celebrate the joy of football and have great stories. And that's why we're starting with this today. So everybody, welcome to feedback. And Martin, Andy Colson from New Hampshire in the States, who was a listener to you when you joined me on the football show on Sirius XM in the States, has sent a long one. He is from Burton over here, and is a West Bromwich Albion supporter. But he writes, firstly, thanks to you, Martin, and the team for the regular excellent quality of the Joy of Football. Always so much for the quality and just a great listen. 15 months ago, I was a special guest for Burton versus Wrexham. Now, this is on the back of us talking so much about Wrexham and their FA Cup tie against Chelsea recently. Complete coincidence, I was in England, but those are one of the breaks. He said, my brother's best mate is Wrexham's assistant coach, Phil Parkinson, and Steve Parkin. They've now had 6 promotions on their CV.
Steve Parkin is the assistant coach.
Yeah.
Phil Parkinson is the manager.
Yeah. They play some great football without the blights of diving, haranguing refs. Cloughie would have loved them. And he goes on with this story. Pre-game, sitting with a great bunch of Wrexham fans, I got chatting to one, a humble potato farmer from the town. He was telling me the club were, as you know, struggling to survive as a non-league outfit. So the potato farmer put his hand in his pocket and for a fair donation had his potato farm on the sleeve of the shirt. About 6 months later, the two Robs made their $4 million bid for the club, and obviously things changed fast. Sponsorship part of it.
I think there's only one Rob.
Yeah, I thought. Yeah, the other one is
Ryan.
Yeah. Get your facts right, Andy. Sponsorship part of it, shirts in particular, and the farmer was approached on behalf of Reynolds, and he met the famous actor who told the humble farmer in order to move the club forward, he needed that space on the shirt, and what could he give him in recompense? It came down to a very generous financial offer or hospitality for every Wrexham game for 2 seasons. The man left Ryan saying he'd ask his family, and they unanimously said, "You love your football, so go and see Wrexham." And he did. He lived the dream, including the US tours. The Chelsea game came out in the US. Staff saw the farmer walking down the road, so the team bus stopped and let him in for the ride, and of course the attention and the memories. Wrexham are a great club. I sat next to Dixie McNeil in the main stand. He was a great centre forward for them, wasn't he? At Burton. Got given a match shirt after. I could go on. It's a great club and a great story. Wrexham.
That's a lovely story, isn't it? And I think it fits in with what we touched on. There was a lot of jealousy, and I was a non-league rival with assistant manager at Woking when Wrexham turned this corner when Ryan and Rob arrived. And there is, why not my club? That kind of feeling. So they've had to overcome that. And even now you do feel that what comes out of Hollywood is something that doesn't fit in with our culture of down-to-earth, nitty-gritty football. What I would say is, from what I've seen, and this adds to it, it's been done with the very best of intentions to keep the traditions alive and to do it so that they arrive as the Wrexham that were known when they were prior to dropping into the non-league, where they have a real feel and identity, not just for the club, for North Wales generally, And this doesn't surprise me. It's lovely to hear about it. I don't think we'd have heard about it any other way. No. So thanks to Andy Coulton for letting us know. And we'll see whether this story gathers even more momentum and ends up with a Premier League team next season.
Simon Hall's messaged us, and this is the first podcast we've had since I received this message. So we couldn't put it out in the time that it needed to be put out. But fortunately, Martin can update us.
I will later on.
And Simon says, knowing how you and Martin, but particularly Martin, love your non-league footy, I wondered if you'd spotted the achievements of my other much-loved CFC, which is why he contacted me, the mighty Cobham, based a stone's throw down the River Mole from Chelsea's training ground, and have just been promoted to Step 4 of the Isthmian League, and sealed the combined county's Premier South title. Currently, with a plus 94 goal difference, they've scored more league goals than any league or Step 1 to 6 non-league team in the country. We are trying to get a crowd of 500 plus at the Reg Mardwick Stadium, I've never heard of that, for this Saturday's match and trophy lift. If you get the chance to shine a light.
There were 450, I think,
amazing.
Something around 450.
Yeah.
And it is amazing, and of course, it is coincidental that I live about 4 miles away, and your training ground's even closer, your Chelsea training ground. And it's a Lewington success, but it's not Ray Lewington, former England assistant to Roy Hodgson, ex-player at Chelsea and manager at Fulham, and also Sheffield, manager at Fulham, and has followed Roy Hodgson around at big clubs, big jobs. That's Sir Craig's dad, and his brother Dean Lewington, who of course has played about 5,000 games for MK Dons. Yeah. And this is Craig's time, and so it's wonderful. He's the manager, and they've actually won promotion on Saturday the 7th of March, which is incredible. And they got the trophy on the 14th of March presented, where people are still looking for silverware. They've got theirs, and it's on display. And to get, really, the gates are very, very small. It's a nice little stadium. It's got a new...
Where is it?
It's Leg of Mutton Field is. That's what we call it. So if you know where the big car park is in Cobham, it's just the other side of the road. You have to drive in. You can't really see it naturally from the road itself. It's set back. It's a nice little setting. My son played there for Cobham Boys for a while, and he used to train on the old grass pitch, which in the middle of winter, the drainage was fantastic because they never missed a training session. This is the under 12s, under 13s, under 14s. So I've got a soft spot for the club and particularly for Craig. And I'll come on to that a little bit later when I'm going to reactivate this story later in the podcast.
Brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Sorry we couldn't get it in before, but you contacted me too late. Back to Wrexham, Gareth Owen. And says, I'll talk on Wrexham. Really interesting watch. Thanks for this. I would, though, take issue with the assertion that this was essentially Wrexham's first team. Of the usual starters, we were without Kabore, Karkache, James and Sheaf. Kiefer Moore is the usual starting number 9, not Sam Smith, albeit Smith had muscled his way into contention recently. And the first choice Wrexham would usually have one of Broadhead or Windass in behind. So through injury and rotation, I make that 7 changes from a full-strength Wrexham. That's obviously not as many changes as Chelsea, but not insignificant losses to the...
Well, like Chelsea, of course, like Liam Rossini, Phil Parkinson had other games coming up with finishing high in the league in mind, and
in fact lost
they lost to Hull on the Tuesday, and then on Friday won the big game, the North Wales South Wales derby with Swansea, which was I guess if they had to choose one to win and one to lose, it would have come that way round.
So that Hull are nearer them in the fight for promotion.
Well, that's true. That's absolutely true as well. So it's there's a lot of noise around Wrexham, and most of it is positive. As I say, there are still jealousies out there. That the more publicity they get, it's a little bit our way, isn't it? That sort of everybody looks in the other direction and says, "Oh, well, it's too Hollywood." But for me, it's very legitimate. It's done really, really properly within the regulations of the Football League, and they care. I mean, they really do care. I don't know when they're only there living back in the States. They seem to be in North Wales all the time now. But it really matters to them. And I'd like to see, I'm sure the other American owners do feel the same. And of course, they're not such high-profile people as the Hollywood actors. But it is nice to see that there's a connection between the boardroom and the fans, and anybody can't complain about what Wrexham have done since they took over. It's astonishing. 3 consecutive promotions. If they make it 4, that will be. It has happened before, but not in these circumstances.
Right. I went on about the wonderful atmosphere there because there wasn't a flipping PA blasting music and propaganda.
You like that?
I loved it.
Yeah.
And we've had a response to that from Daei. Your name starts with a double D, so you're bound to be Welsh. And he says, totally agree on the hype with the silly music. Travelled from Australia to Wrexham.
He spelt Wrexham the Welsh way, so he obviously is Welsh.
For the Charlton promotion game, and the atmosphere was incredible with no need for artificial stimulation. The little thing backing that up. Very good. Thank you. Aussie. Alan Lake has responded to the passing the ball around the back and boring the arse off us, can I say? With football in your own half the whole time. Talking about boring football that has central defenders being the players who make the most passes. That's the horror of the present day game. Goalkeepers too. Central defender, even if there's a striker close enough so that they can nick the ball first and already through the keeper in no man's land. The manager's orders are to play out from the keeper. Why don't they go wide? My God, why aren't keepers allowed to decide whether they play short or long down the middle or out wide? Seeing Southampton last year constantly getting caught out and conceding, and Burnley the year before that. My club are guilty of doing all of the above. Last season, when in League One, we would occasionally go long and wide with a good percentage of success. This year, a division higher, a division more skilled and quicker, and we've been pressed to bugger, and we've been forced to kick it long. When we have 2 strikers under 6 foot, and another that, although he looks like he could be a target man, openly admits he's no good playing that way. So our plan B was failing, and the ball was coming straight back at us. We were getting no respite. Then when we did get to the opposition 18-yard box, we were always looking for that perfect goal, the perfect cheeky ball that would leave our striker one-on-one 7 yards out. I'll let you all into a secret. We didn't do it or couldn't do it enough. And the ball would just go from wide to inside forward to centre midfield, out and again. Before you could say offside, the ball was back on our 18-yard box. Boring, boring. The individual flair is being tactically coached out of the flair players. Angry, Alan Lee.
Well, that last line is obviously the essence of his anger. I think there is a case to be answered in that respect. What I understand about Premier League academies, there's a lot of emphasis on passing, and yet match winning of getting taking a couple of opponents out of the game with dribbling skills. I mean, it does happen. It's probably less jinky now than it used to be.
It's always
pace,
wide. It's
pace.
always wide. It's never through the middle.
Well, the chances are, double pivot in front of 2 or 3 central defenders. It's a hard way to score, just to do it in an individual way. But committing defenders is really what I think is part of the game. Whichever way you do it, you can do that by overloading. And so that's what passing does. So, yeah, it's a shame. I don't find football boring at all. I think it's fascinating, the different ways people go about trying to win football matches. And if it's to do with making the most of what you have at your disposal, and Alan says that his club's not making the most of what they have at their disposal, that is the key. Good coaches will find a way, looking at the group. I mean, at the top level, of course, we don't like philosophies. Neither of us do, really. And therefore, the players are assigned to make the manager happy in terms of his philosophy, not because they're the best players available. I always used to believe if a good player, when I was involved in non-league management for 20 years, of course, it was easier to sign players, and we're talking about the top level, but if a very good player became available, get him. Whether you needed him in that position, he'd be better, you'd find a way to get him into the team. So that's what's frustrating. I'm not saying it might be boring, it might be very frustrating. And as part of being a football fan, you have to learn to live with there's much more frustration than there is jubilation. So
I'm going to throw one at you now. Best dribbler in the Premier League at the moment. And by the way, I throw that to everybody listening and watching. Let us know. Best dribbler in the Premier League.
Well, I can't really say that there's. I mean, Mo Salah perhaps was. I'm not sure that he has been this season.
I mean, Arsenal have got several, but they're not regulars. Martinelli, Noni Madueke. I mean,
Saka's an excellent dribbler, and I like Jared Bowen. I wouldn't say he'd be everybody's choice for that particular job, but he does dribble, and he does find an end product more often than not. And I know he's been weighed down by the difficulties of West Ham, but now they've bounced back, and he's certainly back to his best. So I'd stick a vote in for him.
Yeah, I mean, I put Semenyo up there, but he's not really a beat the man dribble. He's a dribbler in space with his head up, and he's got the pass to make it worthwhile.
I think there are a lot of good players who have dribbling in their skill set, but you wouldn't say that that's their only skill set because they're not allowed just to go and dribble. I mean, that's best kid in the playground stuff, isn't it? And I think players who operate like that don't last as long in the professional game now because people say, well, you've got to do more when the pass is on player, So, but it is, I'm old enough to have grown up with the Wizard of Dribble, Stanley Matthews, and the players like Tom Finney. Everybody had dribbling players in those days, and it was all part of the fun.
And on television, the guy who dribbled that everybody wanted to see was a Brazilian and wasn't Pele, was Garrincha.
Yeah, he was fantastic. Because you've got George Best and people like that.
George Best was
I mean, George
unique.
Best dribbled past players in the most cloying mud and had the strength, the wiriness in his frame to resist all the challenges. So, yeah, have we got a George Best at the moment? No.
Alex Roberts, back to the Wrexham story. Regarding the Joey Jones tribute, some Chelsea fans joined in, but some were filmed mocking the tribute. A tribute to someone who played for their club. Disgraceful. I would like to think if you knew about this, you'd have condemned it. I do condemn it, and I condemned it to the people around me. In fact, I had a furious row with a couple of people behind me and told them to grow up. Don't you worry about that. The condemnation came before anybody knew it was a Joey Jones tribute. And that's because everybody, when the cards were held up and you couldn't see that it was Joey Jones, everybody wants to make a social media snap assessment, and they prove they're moronic in doing it because they get the answer to their anger wrong.
I didn't think that I was commentating on the game. I didn't think the television quite did justice to it.
I didn't think it was the most brilliant tribute either.
That's probably a fairer point. But I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah,
I told you, didn't I? I phoned you to tell you to.
Mickey told me it was Mickey Thomas,
Oh, yeah.
star of the the Joy of Football, he told me it was going to happen as well.
And he wasn't featured, I don't think, in the. He was a close-up of him later in the game.
Yeah.
But I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't.
I
think
mean,
he was-
they were best friends all their lives.
all their lives.
So. But to be condemned, Alex, I condemn it. But it's more just the culture of today that people are thick.
No, I just think that it's one way where the tributes have been fantastic have been in the sad occasions where I think massive respect has been shown by those who might be hostile between the clubs, but by and large the behaviour has improved enormously around that. Not perfect, but those silences have been silent more often than not.
And the final feedback that we're going to bring in this week is the most important one of all. This is from Colo. Colo, I'm with you all the way.
Colo with a C, not like Colo Touré. This is, by the way, this is a comment filled with irony.
I feel Martin is pressuring Spy. Normally he talks freely and is a good storyteller. Stop being boring, Martin, and chill and let him speak whatever he wants.
I've done a count of the possession percentages, and I speak 23% of the podcast, and Neil speaks 77%. But if you want it tilted even more in his favour, I'm very happy to sit here and listen to these anecdotes, some of which I've heard before.
Martin Tyler. Bog off. But not yet, because we have got 3 of the best.
And he makes them pay.
3 of the best. He's made them pay, and that completes a wonderful hat-trick.
By the way, if you're enjoying the podcast, subscribe. If you're not, hell, subscribe anyway. And don't forget, you can follow us on the Patreon and get more involved. And you can also subscribe and follow us on written material on substack.com, where we're also called The Joy of Football. I'd also like to make a public apology while I get the opportunity. Those who watch regularly will be aware of Tamori the cat, who is constantly climbing on the table and all over us and trying to get the centre of attention. Nathan, our producer, has just generously flung him out, and he's actually just outside the door, desperately trying to get in because he wants to be a part of all this. So apologies to you, Tamori, but stay away.
He speaks more than me, by the way.
3 of the best: young player, old player, player, young player.
Well, it's the same as last week. Max Dowman is, he's done it again, hasn't he? You could argue that actually Arsenal beat Everton solely because of him. It's not quite as simple as that, but he certainly stole the closing moments and didn't steal the points from Everton. He earned them. His first contribution was to set up the very late first goal of the game with a cross from the right with his very good left foot, which Hincapié managed to get to, and Gyökeres scored. And we hear a lot about Mikel Arteta talking about his finishers when we call them substitutes, and all 3 of them were substitutes. And so they did finish. They finished off Everton probably in that moment, although Jordan Pickford was up for the corner, which led to Max Dowman's greatest moment, which was the breakaway to score your first goal. Obviously, everybody remembers the spectacular nature of Wayne Rooney's goal as a 16-year-old. This was very different. I mean, I've watched it over and over again to think, at what point would most people have panicked when you've got to run, the goal escaping, but you've got to carry the ball forward? You're probably not going to try a roll in from the halfway line, although I'm sure he's quite capable of doing that. And at no point did he panic. I mean, we've got to be careful. I'm sure Mikel Arteta will be careful with what he can do in terms of speaking. I know from my own work in non-league football, when you're that age, you have to change in a different changing room, and so all that been done, proper protocol, protection for young people, and how I suppose Max is very used to doing that, but it is it's a good thing that in the very top level that this happens. So he's sort of in the gang, but not totally in the gang. I think he's going to play a huge part. Much has been made, I think, from what I've read about it, about the fact that he hasn't played very much this season, but he was injured for a long period of time. So that was one reason. Perhaps that worked in Mikel Arteta's favour, because Ethan Nwaneri's gone out on loan, hasn't he, for the second half of the season. He's sort of made that step just before Max has done. But no, great talent. Doesn't look, at 16, you can't have the strength to go in against the fully fledged, mature Premier League bodies. But I'm always mindful of the Wayne Rooney's very true story, that when he played for Everton, he already knew he was the best player in the team when he was 16. Of course, he's a different build to Dowman, but no, it's wonderful. Of course, these things can fall off a cliff. It has happened, but injury aside, I'm sure Arsenal will look after him extremely well. And I'd be fascinated to see. They've got some really important games coming up, whether they're going to win all these trophies, and not only scoring his first goal, but having a medal. He was only 16 at the tail end of last year. I mean, he's only 16 in a couple of months, It's not as though he's coming up 17. So can't find enough words at the moment, but it is of the moment. I think everybody feels that, and we must look out for him, but look after him as well.
Michael, our Arsenal supporting producer, blew my mind earlier when he said during COVID he was at primary school. I mean,
Michael or Max?
Max Dowman. No, Michael bunked off primary school. He never went.
Just to score a goal is amazing, but to score a goal like that.
Two questions very quickly.
Stranger than fiction.
Arsenal got an awful lot of 16-year-olds knocking on the first team door this season and getting a little look in. Is that just Arteta being forward, or do you think they've got a unique age group?
Maybe a unique age group. I don't know enough about who else is going to push on. But you need all these players, particularly in Europe, where you can have as many. Preparing a commentary for a European game takes twice as long as it used to, and it's not down to older age. I promise you, there are that many more players you have to cover, and often there are 16 and 17-year-olds on team sheets of clubs from other countries. So, it's a great opportunity. The thing about it that is, we have to remember this in looking at the other side of the coin, and maybe Arsenal. Maybe we shouldn't talk about just one player, but at most clubs, if you've got a sensational 16-year-old, you've had to have 25 other players of that age group to fulfill the fixtures to allow this young player to come through. And those are the ones I sometimes look at. And the ones I come across who've come out of league football and been at academies and not got the nod. And so they end up, either staying in football or giving it up completely. So, that I'm not saying they are sacrificing their childhoods for this, but there are far, far more who will not be Max Dowman. And the industry has created a system whereby we need these youngsters. I just hope that the rejection doesn't lead to too much bitterness, and that the people who do reject from the higher levels encourage these, try and place, not just let them go, try and place them somewhere where they can continue their football career.
And my other question is, there were always 16-year-olds, weren't there?
Trevor Francis, the Superboy he was called, 16 at Birmingham. Yeah, I mean, 16 is pretty young. I mean, Dowman, Dowman and Ethan they played at 15. But some of the 15-year-olds, there was Eamon Collins, I think, who was at Blackpool with Alan Ball. Alan Ball, of course, played 17-year-old, probably World Cup when Alan Ball became a manager. He played at 15. Everybody knew about him. He had a career, but it wasn't quite the career that you'd think if you're so good at 15. People develop at different times, and say Wayne Rooney was an exception. He had a man's body probably when he was 12. It was built to be able to deal with the physical demands of football, and blessed with the skills, of course, to have a fantastic career. Yeah, I think as a commentator, it's inspiring to see. One of the reasons why I love still doing the job. You see the next generation come through, and then you end up, and I just today, for reasons that will become apparent later, I've been researching some players that I travelled to Wembley with in 1976, and they're all in their 70s, one or two in their 80s. Most of them are still with us, and you go, where did the time go? I'm sure they're feeling the same thing as well. So, yeah, it's the way of life, isn't it? And it's a brilliant way of life.
My two young players, I've got two, are 23 and 21. They're fullbacks for Newcastle United, who I saw win at Chelsea at the weekend. And they're both ex-Chelsea players, although Tino Livramento never actually played for the first team. Lewis Hall did. He's the 21-year-old. Martin, I believe they will both go to the World Cup. And I believe that Lewis Hall has a really good chance of playing as England's first choice left back in the World Cup. On the day, Chelsea had Malo Gusto at right back in the first half and Marc Cucurella at left back. Livramento and Hall were the two best fullbacks on the pitch. Livramento kind of played right back for most of the time he was in Chelsea's academy, but I remember him on the right wing more. He's a good shape. He's knocking 6 feet. He's a good shape. Lewis Hall was a midfielder and got put into the first team. He actually made his debut on the left side of the back three, and then went to left wing back in the next game and looked so comfortable. And this was like he's a 17-year-old. And that's the nature of the game now. If you don't get your chance early on and feel as though you've got to move into the first team, you get out if you've got ambitions. And they did, and they both deserve to be where they are. And they're two 23 and 21-year-old Champions League players. And they are getting the experience that they need in order to be England players. And
they both play for England.
Yeah,
so,
Newcastle did not have a really good performance, although they won. But these two were outstanding. And I don't think Livramento will get into the team ahead of Reece James unless he's injured. But obviously Trippier and Walker are no longer in contention. Whether Alexander-Arnold can get back into contention looks very doubtful. I think they'll both go, and I think that Newcastle deserve a lot of credit for signing them because they weren't obvious necessarily. They weren't obvious.
Signed Livramento from Southampton, didn't they?
They weren't obvious Champions League step up to Champions League players, but that's exactly what they've done. And Lewis Hall, with his pace, kept Cole Palmer really quite quiet and made some good forays forward. Two really good players, I'm delighted.
A lot of English players in the Newcastle team with an English manager.
Struggling in the league. Struggling in the English Premier League, but doing quite well in the European Champions League.
The margins have been slender, haven't they? And they're not struggling really as a club. And obviously they've got the financial resources, but are they struggling? Have they got enough depth to really make it work? They're learning about that. It's been a real adventure, and it's a long time since they won at Stamford Bridge, I believe, wasn't it? So,
2012 was the last time, and they'd only won twice there this century, and the other one was a League Cup tie. So
that was when the goal from the shot from out on the left touchline.
2012.
2012. Pape Cisse, was it?
Yeah, Pape Cisse. Who played up front with Demba Ba that day. Petr Cech said to me that what really annoyed him about that goal was he could see what Cisse was going to do. He was going to shoot over him, and he was prepared, and he still couldn't stop it despite being 6'5" or whatever it was. And that's how good the goal was.
It's
from the left touch.
We talk about goals a lot, don't we? Because that's my obsession, really. And the difference between Cisse's goal and Anthony Gordon's goal to win the game recently is probably about 50 or 60 yards. And yet they both count the same, and they both happened in wins. And for Anthony Gordon to get there, that's what people underestimate. Yeah, of course, a tap-in, but you've got to see the opportunity to get there. English player scoring, set up by Joe Willock, an English player setting it up. So, yeah, well done, the tune. Sorry to say that, Neil.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I'm delighted for Livramento and Hall. Old player.
Well, this is where I'm going back to Craig Lewington. As I say, son of the great Ray Lewington, brother of Dean Lewington, who played all those games for MK Dons, and they were all there watching this trophy presentation. And Craig is somebody who fought hard to play. He played non-league, and I have a story to tell. I say, this is Craig Lewington. I rang him this morning to say we were going to mention him in the podcast, and I said, I hope I'm rung too early. It was about 8:45. And he said, I'm sitting on the tractor on the pitch, having got the trophy. There's no slacking up for and that's the sort of football family they are, and the football people that they are. But my story about Craig, and we laughed about it, and he knows I'm going to tell this. He was a player. The second club I joined as a coach in non-league was Kingstonian, a quite famous team in the Surrey, South West London area. And our first game was at home to Dover, and the team was in trouble. You only get Alan Dowson, the manager I worked with. This was in January.
Can I just say, Dover, wasn't that the team that in his dotage Neville Southall went and managed or played?
I think that might have been Margate.
No, I think it was Dover.
No, I think
Dover.
Well, I seem to remember seeing him at a Margate game where he was in the other dugout, and Terry Yorath as well. Michael will look it up on his phone. We'll come back to that. And so Dover were top of the league, but we'd signed two players from our previous club, Walton and Hersham. One of them got brought down for a penalty that the other one scored, so we were 1-0 up. And after 35 minutes, Craig Lewington got booked, our midfielder, and after 37 minutes, he got booked again. And we lost the game 3-1. And I was telling Craig said, as soon as I mentioned it to Craig this morning, he went, yeah, Dover, wasn't it? And I went, yeah. And do you know what? I believe that's the only 35 minutes I saw him play for us. He told me he was ordered on the Monday to go to an extra training session. The manager, Alan Dowson, ran the legs off him. That was his memory of it. But so that was 35 minutes. I wasn't there at kickoff because I'd been doing a commentary in the morning, and I got one of those motorbike taxis to the ground. So I probably only actually saw him play for about 8 minutes. And to my recollection, he didn't play again. Certainly in a game that I was there. He might have done, but we've always loved. But we remain very good friends. And of course, obviously, I don't know Dean at all, but I do know Ray very well, and they're great football people. So for him to do that, that's the first step from the Premier League down to step 6, along with lots and lots of clubs. The first club to get silverware to win a league this season is Craig Lewington's Cobham. And then they won the league on the 7th of March, and they've got their trophy. And good luck to them. They go up into the Isthmian League, South Central, I think it is, where there'll be a lot of other local clubs. But they're a small club in a very football-y way, although people always talk about Chelsea training Cobham. They don't actually train in Cobham. No, they train in Stoke Davenham, which is just across we go out of Cobham into Stoke Davenham. So, and the railway station, I think, is called Cobham and Stoke Davenham. It's right by the station. So, it's full of football. The players go to cafes and things in Cobham. But this is the team, the Cobham team, getting some recognition. And Craig Lewington, who's probably been a bit under the radar, even in his own family as a football person, he's top of the tree. And Craig, very well done.
Well done, Craig. I just want to tell a story about your dad. I hope you don't mind. But
no, don't, because this is Craig's moment.
No.
Tell a story about Ray another time.
I just think he'll appreciate this, which is Ray Lewington, who played, as Martin said earlier, for a lot of clubs, and I mean, managed Crystal Palace, he managed Brentford, he's managed a load. He's never been out of work.
No, and he's helping with Brentford now. Yeah. Actually,
he's never been out of work since he retired from playing. But his first ever game in the first team for Chelsea was a friendly against Italy under 23s. And he came on, he started, I'd never seen him play. And he injured in his first 3 challenges, 3 different Italian players. He just kicked the life out of them going for the ball, and they all needed treatment. And I could not believe what I was seeing. And I've never let him forget it, Ray. And I remind him of it every time I see him. And he says, I was just so excited to be out on the pitch. I couldn't stop myself.
He'd have been excited when Craig held out that trophy.
Yeah.
I promise you.
Right. My old player is, I want to take you back to 1999. And it was the first year that Chelsea were in the Champions League. And I travelled with the club to the first away game that they ever played in the Champions League, which was against Hertha Berlin. Hertha Berlin won by 2-1. And both their goals were scored by Ali Daei. Ali Daei.
I think it's Daei.
Yeah, Daei. Who was an Iranian centre forward. And I'm really telling this in the wake, obviously, of the problems with the World Cup now in Iran and whether they go or not. And I'm really telling it just because I want to make the case that this is a nation with a footballing history that's important. Nothing else, nothing political in this case. He scored 108 goals for his country in 148 appearances. And for a long time until recently, was the highest international goal scorer ever. That's how good he was. He got both goals that night in Berlin against the World Cup winning centre-backs, Marcel Desailly and Frank Leboeuf. So it was a major occasion for him. And he is now the 3rd highest international goal scorer ever. And in fact, I've got the highest international goal scorers here. I just thought it'd be interesting. Cristiano Ronaldo, 143 goals, 226 caps. Lionel Messi, 115 in 196. And Ali Daei, 108 in 148 caps. They're the only 3 with a century of goals. I mean, it is remarkable to do this. And I'm just going to run through the others. Sunil Chetri of India has 95. 5th equal, Romelu Lukaku. And Mokhtar Dahari of Malaysia with 89. 7th, Robert Lewandowski with 88. 8th, Ali Makbout of the UAE with 85. 9th, Ferenc Puskas for both Hungary and Spain, 84. 10th equal, Godfrey Chitalu of CAF. Is that the...
No, from Zambia.
Is it?
Well, you've got Zambia.
Oh, yeah, Zambia. Yeah, sorry, Zambia.
Yeah, CAF is the federation that is.
Yeah. And Neymar, Brazil, with 79. And 12th equal, Harry Kane and Hussein Saeed of Iraq with 78. And I'll just throw in the 14th person because he's arguably the best ever, Pele, with 77. But Ali Daei, this is a country that has a football history. That's all I want to say. And it's we're not in a good place globally where we're losing countries. We've already lost Russia. I wonder how certain other countries are still in the World Cup.
Can I just add to that, Neil? My first World Cup was 1978, and Iran qualified and played, and I got to know the players, covered a couple of their games, and they were charming. They were great people, proper football people, very helpful to a young commentator because I had to
78
find out.
was still Persia. They weren't Iran for another year.
Well, they were called Iran in the World Cup.
Yeah.
100% they were called Iran.
Yeah.
And Eskandarian, I think, was one of the players who went on to play in America. And honestly, they couldn't have been more open and friendly. So, listen, peace around the world, please. And let's hope we're talking about Iranian football without this backdrop in the months to come.
And just a little note on Ali Daei. His family got into a bit of trouble about 4 years ago with the Iranian authorities because he was supporting the protests. He was a huge centre forward. I actually thought he was a bit of a lump, but He's a lump who got 2
Long
goals.
live the lumps.
Yeah, he got 2 goals. He got 2 goals against the World Cup winning centre back.
The polite word for it is an option. There was a player who played for Sheffield Wednesday who was about 6'5" and played a few games at the start, but was often the option at the bench. John Pearson, I think it was. John Pearson. Yeah, very tall and skinny centre forward. Well, that's an interesting choice. When you suggested it, I was all panicking, but I think you've covered it beautifully.
Yeah,
so.
I've still got the bruises from that trip. Yeah, well done him. Right, player of the week.
Tottenham's performance at Anfield was completely unforeseen, really, after their recent troubles. And I could have picked really much anybody who played in the game. But Richarlison scored the goal and threatened to score the goal on a number of occasions. He threw his head in everything, was really up for the challenge, adopted his own particular physical approach, which others followed. And I think he's reached 100 goal involvements in the Premier League as well. It's a nice little sidebar to the goal. The most important thing was to get Spurs a point. 73 Premier League goals and 27 assists. I think those are the figures, something like that anyway. So it's a milestone for any footballer. But to do it in those circumstances, he's got a bit of a penchant for doing well at Anfield. I've seen him score there for Everton, and I think maybe his 5th Anfield goal, something like that. So he symbolised a really powerful. To think that the dressing room are all up in arms and everything. We've heard all these stories leading up to it. Players don't want to play, and the club isn't being run properly, etc., etc. And that there may be all sorts of strength to those gossips, but the truth is, on that day, judge them on that game, and they probably deserved to win, to be honest, marginally. Liverpool, everybody knows, weren't at their best, but when you're a goal down and you're fighting for a point, the teams with no character don't get that goal and they don't get that point. And Richarlison got the goal. Spurs deserved the point. And I think I saw Arne Slot, and this may be, if I get this wrong, I apologise to the Liverpool management, but he was actually calling for the final whistle to protect the 1-1 because he was, they did push on right to the very end. I think they had a corner even after that gesture from the manager. Maybe I read it wrong, but it looked like that on the television. So yeah, Liverpool not at their best, but Spurs, if they play like that, and I've got the next game commentating for the Premier League productions on the home game against Nottingham Forest, which there's a cup final later in the day. Obviously, the League Cup final with Manchester City and Arsenal, but this will be in its own way as a bigger cup final, really, certainly for the intriguing situation which the bottom of the Premier League is.
I remember seeing Richarlison start for Watford on several occasions when Marco Silva was their manager in the Premier League. And then, of course, both went to Everton. Silva went to Everton, then took Richarlison to Everton. But he was always a winger. It was only when all those injuries to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, were happening, that he moved to centre forward. But he clearly liked being a centre forward.
He liked scoring goals, and that's
I thought in the last World Cup, when Brazil were underwhelming, that he was actually a very good centre forward.
One of their better players, wasn't he? Yeah, absolutely. And have a chance to do that again, I'm sure, if he stays fit. And he's obviously missed a lot of football at Tottenham, like everybody else had. To do that with, I think they said 13 players unavailable, with Conor Gallagher being withdrawn on the morning of the match as well. So it's a great effort. Well, which way it goes, we'll have to wait and find out. But if it leads to, survival, I think it'll be seen as a real turning point.
My player this week is, not surprisingly, a Paris Saint-Germain player. I was in Paris for the PSG performance against Chelsea. Vitinha. Vitinha basically plays the pivot role, except he doesn't stick. He goes forward an awful lot, and he gets wide as well. But he's got he's got 2 wider midfielders and the 3 forwards ahead of him in the 4-3-3. I remember him at Wolves being not in the team. I remember him on the bench at Wolves. I don't know what the story is there or was and why he didn't get games and why he wasn't. I'm not saying it was a mistake by Wolves. It could well have been that he wasn't good enough. But first of all, his performance for Paris Saint-Germain is the best individual performance I've seen this season by anybody. It was his passing. It was his first touch is unbelievable. It was his awareness, his vision. I wouldn't say he ran the game because those PSG players, the attacking players, were just unbelievable. Funnily enough, the guy who was the least impressive for me were the 2. Marquinhos. I'm not sure about Marquinhos. I know he's the Brazilian. I think he's the Brazil captain now, isn't he? I'm not sure about.
He's the glue that holds them together.
Yeah.
He is the player that sets the standards and has been their record appearance maker and everything. You don't underestimate his contribution, even if he might personally be having not such a great
year. But the other guy who was a bit iffy was Nuno Mendes, who a year ago we were talking about as the best left back in the world, but he just kept going missing.
Didn't in the Club World Cup final, didn't they?
Yeah, he got exposed.
Well, why didn't Chelsea expose him this time?
Because we got a different coach, and who knows? I don't know.
Cole Palmer ran riot down that side of the pitch.
With Gusto, who was right back again, charging beyond. I don't know why, but it wasn't the same tactics. But Vitinha was one of the players who covered for Nuno Mendes with just genius. So Nuno Mendes was given the freedom. He was still brilliant going forward. But
this was, let's be fair to Livramento, this was an away game. Whereas the final was a neutral game and a final. And now he's got the chance to do it in the home game. Maybe,
But Vitinha looks one of the best players in the world, and somehow he wasn't a first choice at Wolves, and it is just alarming. He scored a brilliant chipped goal, gifted to him in the first place, but he scored a brilliant chipped goal. And as he ran away to celebrate, Barcola, who was preferred to Kvaratskhelia, he and Daei were preferred to him. As he ran away to celebrate Vitinha, Barcola just sort of flicked the back of his hair. And if you could get a chance to have a look, as Vitinha runs to the crowd, he seems to want to put his hair back in place. As he does it, I don't think he was too happy with that, which was one of my lighter moments of the game. But his flick in the build-up to the 5th goal to set Hakimi free down the flank was just absolutely visionary, world-class genius. And Vitinha is now one of the best players in the world. And Wolves, what did you do? There you go.
I do think he has developed hugely, hasn't he? And maybe that's just what happens. I know you have your theory about 24, and that's you, and that's
it's obviously not across the board.
No, of course it isn't. And he has blossomed through those sort of middle 20s to what he is today, and he's a star. No question.
3 of the best. So coming up, we've got Letter from the Gantry, and then after that, we'll have a very quick we need to talk about. But right now, it is time for Martin Tyler's Letter from the Gantry.
Letter from the Gantry.
As always, thank you, Neil. Sometimes I wonder if some of my stories are too far in the distant past to carry much relevance for today. If you think that, please forgive me. The past 50 years of my commentary life have flown by, and what might well seem ancient to you can appear modern in my mind. Which is why I'm so glad to report on a feel-good tale which perfectly links 2026 with 1976, saintly tale even, from St Mary's, from within the home of Southampton Football Club. 50 years ago, Southampton, then a second division outfit, caused a monumental upset by not only winning the FA Cup, but by defeating the might of Manchester United in the final at the old Wembley. And United finished 3rd in the first division. The Saints missed out on promotion to the top flight, ending up 6th in Division 2. But a goal from Bobby Stokes just 7 minutes from time produced the kind of shock associated with the grand old competition. I was there. I had the very good fortune to travel with the Southampton team on their coach with a camera crew broadcasting live interviews with the players and manager Laurie McMenemy from the departure from the team hotel to the journey along the road to Wembley. The morning after the final, my job was to wake up a couple of players at their celebration base camp in London's West End and get them to the studio for a How the Cup Was Won show to be broadcast on the Sunday afternoon. Along with the match winner came Mick Channon, the poster boy of the club who'd already played for England and would end up with 46 caps and 21 international goals. Though sleep had been in short supply for both, their spirits were understandably high. I was very lucky to be in such close proximity at their historic weekend. Because of a colour clash in the final, Southampton wore at Wembley their second strip of yellow shirts, blue shorts and yellow socks. Now they have recreated a similar strip to mark this golden anniversary. It's a 21st century remake with some of the 1976 legends actually playing a part in the design. Woven onto the kit are the signatures of all 15 players who took part in the FA Cup run, plus that of manager McMenemy. Just like 50 years ago, there are no names on the backs of the shirts. Another imaginative touch is that 1,976 replicas are available to buy, 1976, along with a smaller number of goalkeeper kits in the style of those worn by Ian Turner, who back in the day kept clean sheets in the quarter-final, the semi-final and the final itself. A percentage of the profits will be passed on to the players, most of whom are still alive, or to the families of those who are no longer with us, like the goal-scoring hero Bobby Stokes, the cavalier and classy Peter Osgood, and the calm defender Mel Blythe. All this was set up before Southampton started their FA Cup adventures this season. The retro kit was introduced for the third round, a tricky tie at League One Doncaster Rovers. Southampton came through 3-2. It was worn again in round 4, a victory at home after extra time against fellow Championship side Leicester City. But the initiative really came to national attention when the away fifth round match at Premier League Fulham was broadcast live. The well-merited 1-0 triumph at Craven Cottage smacked of the spirit of 50 years ago. Of course, football logic always tells you that success is not about the shirt, but those who wear it. And in the league, in regulation kit, they've shot up the Championship table, revived by their German coach, Tonda Eckert. An excellent recent victory at promotion rivals Coventry emphasised that point. 50 years ago, the Saints' quarter-final was away to fourth-tier Bradford City. Now it's at home to trophy-hungry Arsenal. Logic tells you that it will be the end of the replica shirts, though they may well be seen again at a planned Legends match between the two 1976 finalists. But there was very little logic about the sensational success of the Saints 50 years ago. You just never know. Whatever happens, many congratulations to those at Southampton FC who have stylishly recognised that football history is there to be honoured and cherished. Other clubs, please take note.
And of course, you can read Martin's letters, although we're a bit behind. They go up on substack.com under the Joy of Football name. Martin, Mick Channon.
Yeah.
To return to the theme where we started, great dribblers. I mean, he led the way, I think, for people like Chris Waddle with that ragged-haired, ragged shirt, crushed outside the shorts, crushed because it was just not neat.
Fearless forward.
But he would get the ball and he would go for it. And
he started as a left winger.
Yeah, he was a ragged runner.
Yeah.
You know, if you went to challenge him, some bit of him would probably strike you. But do you think that kind of inspirational, but almost not ill-disciplined, but free spirit player exists now?
Well, he's more than a free spirit footballer, really. I mean, as on the field, free spirit, but free spirit off it as well, of course. And he used to say that this was only his hobby, that following the horses was his. And of course, he's had a fantastic second career as a racehorse trainer and
on the flat.
and really taken the love of. I mean, the stories are legendary about how he needed to get the result of the 2:35 for a 3 o'clock kickoff, and his warm up was rather affected not by the result, but he needed to know whether his horse had come in. So just a one-off, really, and he'll be there. They're going to have some celebrations as a group, the players. Which,
but I think that free spirit isn't allowed to exist anymore.
I don't know. I mean, you've got Pedro Neto, who's allowed to run with the ball, and he's a dribbler.
Yeah, he's allowed to run with the ball, but he's got to have glue on his boots that stick to the touchline, and it's all very choreographed.
Well, the game is so the freedom to express as a mature person in the middle of a top level match is limited, really. You probably run the risk of your future career at that club if you go against orders, which wasn't. I'm sure Laurie McMenemy would say, Mick, just get at 'em, just do your stuff. And he was like the jockey on the horse going down down the out. When he played down the outside, of course, then he played more in the middle. They had a wonderful thing. Ron Davis, as I've said before on this podcast, was my hero. He was part of it. Mick was there, Martin Chivers was there, and Terry Payne, who played forever for Southampton, was part of England's World Cup winning squad. Actually played one game in the tournament, in 1966. So they weren't the best defensively, but they got into, as a group, they got into the old First Division. And Ron, I think, was signed for that season and ended up joint top scorer with George Best. It was pretty good.
I mean, it's extraordinary, really, that little Southampton had Terry Payne, England outside right, had Mick Shannon, England's striker, but then outside left. Martin Chivers.
No, he was more of a striker for England, wasn't he?
Yeah,
really?
For England.
But he was an outside left as a kid.
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
get him in the team. Well, how can we get him
I'm
in
looking
the
at
team?
the Southampton front line. Yeah. Martin Chivers, who was a long-time England centre forward, and Ron Davis, who was a generational Wales centre forward.
As a header of the ball, he was generational. Yeah. I mean, the story of he used to train in army boots, so that when he played, this was right at the start of his career before he even got anywhere near Southampton. So that actually he trained in army boots. So when he took them off and put his football boots on, he felt a stone lighter and could jump even higher. Brilliant. You know. So they were. It was a lovely experience to be part of it. And I mentioned in earlier podcasts that the year before I went with the Fulham team to Wembley, and Fulham gave a great account of themselves, but Southampton actually won against all the odds. And it was a special time. That they're all getting together again is lovely, and that the majority of them are still with us, which is great news.
Letter from the Gantry. Right, a very quick. We need to talk about. Martin, we need to talk about Aston Villa. As we speak, this is their record this season. First 6 games, all competitions. First 6 games, no wins. Next 27 games, 22 wins. Since then, 1 win in 9.
Strange, isn't it?
I mean, talk about roller coaster. It's the most extreme I think I've ever come across.
Well, Unai Emery is a demanding coach. Whether the demands have been so great, I mean, there's so many matches for Villa. It's an indication of their progress after being probably, would I say, given that Manchester City weren't quite as big as they are now by some distance, they're probably the biggest club to get relegated from the Premier League since the start of the Premier League, Aston Villa.
Yeah.
I would say they were an ever-present. They were an ever-present. Same something. But they had been an ever-present when they went down. So to come back and re-establish the club, clearly there are some financial issues in balancing all the restrictions now that there are on top clubs with the sustainability clauses, and I think that might be an unsettling undercurrent to it. They're involved in have been involved in some unusual transfers in the last 2 or 3 years, and then suddenly Daniel Marlon who was contributing to those wins, suddenly is surplus to requirements, or maybe they needed to get some money in to make sure everything adds up for the accountants. It is a complete shock that they've fallen away so badly. Although last year, I remember mentioning before to you that I did their last game where they needed to get a result at Old Trafford to be in the Champions League, and then Emi Martinez got sent off, and the game went away from them. And it feels a little bit like that.
Yeah, I do think they massively miss Kamara and McGinn, who have been injured for quite a long time.
Yeah, John McGinn's back. Kamara won't be back. I did the game when he got injured in the cup tie at Tottenham, which they won. But he was injured very early in that game and was obviously out for the rest of the season, as far as I understand.
But he's obviously uncomfortable with his left backs. He keeps changing them. And I've never rated any of the centre-backs who play next to Ezra Konsa, whether it's Pau Torres or they got rid of Diego Carlos now, but Tyrone Mings is back from his latest injury. It's not quite as good as it was.
It just feels that they're pushed hard, and even winning the way they win games, they push hard. It's a relentless type of football, although I'm told now that they do slow it down. The last time I saw them was when they got knocked out of the FA Cup by Newcastle, that there is a sort of easing. Let's have a little bit of a respite rather than being full heavy metal Jurgen Klopp type football, which they have been under Emery at the times when they've been getting the most success. Yeah, Morgan Rogers has had a pretty rough time recently, and he's an outstanding player.
I saw them lose 4-1 to Chelsea at Villa Park, and Yuri Tillemans was missing as well. I mean, they just had no midfield, and then I think Matty Cash got injured, but yeah, bit of a struggle.
I think their best.
I bet they win the Europa League.
Well, a struggling team won it last year. Two struggling teams got to the final last year.
Yeah.
Though we'll see, they've got some. They're in a good position. We're speaking before the second legs, but they're in a good position to get to the next stage anyway.
That's just about it. But I'm going to bring you. I haven't warned anybody about this. I'm going to bring you stoppage time.
Stoppage time.
And in stoppage time...
Ref, how much longer is it to go?
It's a short stoppage time.
Okay.
So give it your all. I'm going to end where we started with a feedback comment from Andy Coulton in New Hampshire about something different, not about Wrexham this time, but about a previous one of our podcasts. The Joy Football is always excellent. This episode with Robson Kanu is fascinating. A career and life on a road less travelled, a desire to make changes with his dad, find answers beyond synthetic painkillers, career saving for Hal Robson Kanu, life-changing for others, absolute compelling listening. I think if you didn't see that Hal Robson Kanu episode of the podcast, I think we all agreed it was a really special one. And that he was a remarkable person. I mean, he was a good footballer, and because he was a good footballer, he was a wealthy young man, and he's used it to go into a business completely different from any other footballer.
And it is a very competitive business. I wasn't as sure then that I am now that that's the case, because I've been looking for Hal's products, to be honest with you, Neil, and I've found others, which I would think may be slightly more expensive than Hal's. So I'm obviously not quite going to the right local supermarket, because I want to get on a course of his, because he convinced me about the merit of his product, and I'm sure he convinced many other people as well. And like people say, support your local business.
Yeah.
I've always been a believer of support somebody who was a footballer.
Yeah, brilliant.
Is it Jo Nesbø, the Norwegian crime novelist who was at Spurs for a little while? And I read that on the first time I bought one of his novels, and I bought them all because he's a footballer, and
Well, he was a charmer as well, wasn't he? When he was here, Hal, and if you haven't seen it, have a look at that podcast, because it really was mind blowing, a lot of it, and we got a lot of Arsenal, Reading, West Bromwich Albion tour, Wales obviously in there as well. So yeah. Thanks again.
He came all the way to your kitchen, Neil, which is worth a mention in itself, really. You have to know it to understand that comment.
Yeah, but it wasn't far for him, to be fair. Yeah. That's it for this week's podcast. If there's anything that you wished we'd said and we haven't, bad luck.
We'll try to do better, as always.
Right.